everybody. This is Amelia, again, back with the Down to Earth podcast. I believe that this is episode 3 at this point. I feel like I've done quite a few episodes at this point, so it's kind of hard to exactly keep track, but I believe we're on episode 3. 3 is a great number, good old number of power. And I'm coming to you from a very different location than I usually talk to you. Usually I talk to you under a tree, talk to you under either an Aldridge Park or under a tree near my dorm. But today I'm coming to you from a very different place, and I am being down to earth with you in a different way. I am actually driving home at the moment, basically, taking concrete roads, taking large California highways to get back to my home in San Diego. So not too far from Irvine, but definitely still a journey and definitely still a trip. So instead of coming back to nature, I am also, in a way, coming back to where I was grown and where I was born. So basically, I feel this is also a great place to talk about my research project, because as the research project itself wraps up and comes to a close, I think also now, I myself am wrapping up the quarter and coming back home. So basically, looking and reflecting on my research project, goodness, that was a lot. That was a lot of work, and that was a lot of stuff to do. But I can honestly say that I loved the research process, and I'm not just saying that because I am talking on a website. I genuinely found how much I really enjoyed and really loved research. I can say that I have done a smaller research project before. I, in fact, did a research project for one of my art history classes that was basically on the Etruscans and talking about music and dance and talking about flora and fauna, doing something that was a little bit similar and a little bit of a taste of what I ended up doing with greenery in the end, with the greenery tapestry. But I can honestly say that was 6 pages, 6 to 8 pages, 3,000 words. I think my final greenery essay ended up being more than 7,000. It was a lot. It was a lot of words. It was more than double. I think for the other essay, I used maybe 20 sources, and in this one, I think I was nearing 50 sources in my bibliography. So this one was definitely the most extensive research project that I have done before. I will also say, I think in terms of writing, in general, I've always loved writing. I've always really enjoyed this writing process. I find the process of getting to write down all of your thoughts, I find it to be very therapeutic. I've always loved it. I've always liked it. And I think it helps also that in school and otherwise, that usually, I've had teachers that congratulate me for my writing, or generally, I get positive feedback from my writing. And so I think it's something that's become very core to me and core to who I am. It started with, writing poetry. I wrote comics for a while as well. It went back to writing poetry. And now I think I've really found that I really enjoy research, and I really enjoy this process of writing essays. Before coming to UC Irvine, I actually didn't really have to write a full research paper. I think I wrote one, again, on poetry that was about comparing the poetry of Emily Dickinson to another poem, but I think it was genuinely just a homework thing that was marked complete incomplete. So even though I took many AP classes in high school and did quick write essays, I didn't really get a chance to really sit with my thoughts and to really learn how do you learn how to formulate an argument, but how do you form an argument and then come back to it and then come back to it and then come back to it again. When I first did that, when I was coming to UCI, I think I was still applying some of those quick write skills, those quick write training, if you will, to my essays. I believe I think with my Annihilation essay and my Green Knight essay, I ended up, I spent a long time actually doing it, but for my first draft portion, I found it best to just sort of approach it, look at the question, and just write, because that was the way that I knew how to write. But frankly, it ended up turning out with some pretty sloppy, not amazing first drafts, with genuinely times where I remember going to peers and I remember going to other groups of people and asking them to read my writing, even asking my parents to read my writing, and having them say, I don't know what you're trying to say. And that was very frustrating, and that felt very hard, because also I think, like, while I had been told that I was, like, a good writer and genuinely, like, I enjoyed writing in general, I still, like, struggled sometimes with, like, AP writing. Like, while I was, like, good at it, I felt like I could never totally make, like, coherent, perfect arguments, and it felt like other people were able to just, like, string together these ideas really fast, and I always felt like I was, I don't know, a little bit, like, I wouldn't quite say dumb, but not quite, like, up to par in that way. But I think I've figured, and I think I've found out that, of course, not to toot my own horn at all, but I like to think thoughts deeply and to dwell on them and to think about them more, and to then go to bed and then think about them more, and then sit with a cup of coffee and talk to people about my ideas and then think about them more. There's something about that quick writing process that did not work for me. And so I'm very happy, after having this research project and after my experience in Hume Corps, to realize that that isn't what writing is completely. That, like, while it is very helpful and very useful to have those abilities to sit down and to write something, that real thought comes from intention, and it comes from sitting and thinking and working over a long period of time. I'd say even with my Etruscan essay that I worked on before, that I think I ended up doing in a process of about, well, I'd been thinking about it for a while. I ended up really writing for about a week, really, and I finished this essay in that time. But Greenery is probably the essay that I have worked on for the longest period of time. I worked on it throughout the entire quarter, and it is week 10 at this point, end of week 10, and I am now done with it. So I think for that, I feel like very happy that I have gotten to sit and to really, like, think and to enjoy this process of thinking. I'd say recently, like in our most recent lectures, that we talked about how thought and we talked about how reflection itself is a sort of process of care work. And it's a caring, I think, not only for your community, but also for yourself. That it says something when you are able to sit and to take your thoughts seriously enough, to really take your thoughts seriously enough, and to think, to stew in them, to allow them to take shape. Because I think part of my problem, too, when I was originally writing those essays where people didn't really know what I was saying, it was because of my diction, the general way that I wrote my essays, and that overall, like, I was very, like, not so secure about what I was writing exactly. Not to just call it a confidence thing, but to say that I always would couch what I was trying to say with, like, perhaps or maybe, because I felt like I couldn't really come out and say the things that, like, I originally wanted to say. With my very first essay talking about Greenery, I talked about how I talked about the moment where he's, like, approaching the Green Chapel, and I talked about the entanglement between religion and nature, and talked about, like, nature as this place where basically Gawain himself is, like, being de-armored, and where he's, like, vulnerable, but he's not only vulnerable in this physical sense, but also this religious sense, because sort of hobby horse that I found myself writing again and again with a lot of what I like researching. I really like talking about religion. Maybe it's because my dad is a religious studies professor, but I've always grown up talking about religion and talking about faith-based thought. And so I just loved talking about it and loved researching it. But I think I felt from the very beginning, when I talked with my seminar professor at the time, she sort of was like, are you so sure that you want to take this angle? And I think I've been told that a few times, where it's kind of like, are you sure that you want to like take that angle and take that approach? And so I think learning now to have the confidence and have confidence with what I'm saying, that I don't need necessarily the direct, like, approval of some, like, higher figure or anything to tell me that, like, I should write what I'm going to write, and to know that I have the argument capability, but also to know that I have, like, the evidence to back up what I am trying to say. So I think I've definitely developed my confidence as a writer. It's allowed me to be much more clear with what I'm trying to say. I found it very easy writing my greenery essay to merely to sit and to have my thoughts and to think my thoughts, but then to write sentences that were very clear and were very precise and very to the point. While I still was able to languish or to like linger in these longer prose, it was and to have that like sort of poetic moment and to have those sort of sense of poetics, because I have that poetry background. I like writing poetry. I like writing creatively. I think that I was also able to just say what I meant when I needed it. Sometimes, because in an essay, it's about communication. It's about communicating what you mean to say. And so just saying what you mean when you mean it is a skill that you don't think is hard to have, but I've definitely learned was hard to have, but now I think that I have reached it. I think I have learned it. I would say generally focusing specifically on my research, I think I originally came in wanting to talk about religion, similar to if you look at some of my, I was mentioning it earlier with how much I really enjoy talking about religion. But I thought I was going to even talk about like Buddhism and talk about like, don't even know how I was going to entirely connect it to Buddhism, but I felt like I was going to connect it to religion somehow, because that was like always my thing. But in my final project, I didn't end up connecting it at all to religion. I did not connect it to religious thought at all, really. I think in the beginning, I also really wanted to talk about materiality, because I saw that it was a tapestry, and immediately my brain went entanglement. Like that's, as the kids say, that's so entanglement coded. Like I felt like it was very much something that I could directly apply within my own research. It was only later that I then discovered that through this dyeing process that it takes in this pollution, but also would further pollute the environment, and so therefore is participating in this action of the tragedy of the commons, of the pollution of shared space when nobody values the space because it is shared and not owned by anybody. That was definitely something that was unexpected, because I think the tragedy of the commons is really interesting. I learned about it in my AP Environmental Sciences class, and I was very content that I got to really talk about it and really engage with it. I would say also, in terms of specifically my research, I think I was surprised how many things I encountered that I had learned about before and that I had really enjoyed learning about before. When I was in middle school, I really enjoyed talking about Victorian textiles, and that was like really one of my things. And so I had never directly learned about Morris or Morris and Company before, but I found it to be really interesting that I had picked a work that allowed me to sort of use my past knowledge when I was talking about this, to use something that was just like a little thing that I liked, and liked learning about, and actually use that and to talk about that here. I'd say also, in terms of that, I also got to talk about the ownership of land. I got to talk about the enclosure movement, and that was something that I found very fascinating, talking about the Industrial Revolution all the way back in my AP World class. And so that was also something that I was really proud and really glad that I got to incorporate into my final product. But yeah, more on unexpected turns. I'd say, in terms of my original thought of when I was looking at the tapestry, I did think something about the viewer experience was definitely going on. I think that there's always something to the viewer, because I mean, all of art history and all of looking at art history, there is the whole point of like looking at an art piece and why you analyze it is questioning, why does that make me feel something? Why does that generate some sort of feeling within me? And so I think that was something that I really, really wanted to explore in my essay. And I was very glad that I got to explore through talking about this sense of sight, because none of the animals actually looking at you was something that like I really wanted to incorporate for a while. And so I was very glad when I arrived to that final thought and that final realization of, oh, I understand now like why they are not looking at us. They are not looking at us because that further invites the viewer to look, but also because the human viewer has never regarded them before, has never really thought to look at them and to think of them before. So why would the animal look to them? But that each of these animals are looking, that is a sort of interconnection. And that was something that I didn't totally come to until I read secondary source, that particular environmental secondary source, talking about the art of witness, basically, and how important it is to see and to really see our more than human world. I also don't think that I really expected to directly talk about the Wyndham family, or to like find a book that completely just talks about the Wyndham estate. That was not something, that was a complete gold mine for my research, and I'm very glad that a person sat down and actually wrote about the complete Wyndham estate, because that provided me some very fertile ground for analysis and for critique that I thought was really great, and a really great resource that was unexpected that I even had it at all, but allowed me to really talk about aestheticization and to talk about that sort of perspective of the eye even more. So I'd say, yeah. I also think I expected myself to write long. I expected that to happen. Don't think I expected my essay to, I think, go to 23 pages, and including figures page, bibliography, acknowledgements page that is a little bit cheesy, it getting to like 30 pages. I did not expect for that to happen. I did expect the amount of footnotes that I ended up doing, but the amount of writing itself, that is something that I did not expect. But yeah, I think I've really learned a lot with my time in HumeCore. I feel like I've learned how to write basically through trial and error. I figured it out. I feel like I finally figured it out. And I genuinely could not be more thankful for this process of writing this essay, of writing this research paper that has allowed me to understand that my ideas have merit, and how to take this sort of confidence with my ideas, and to be able to really to think and to stew. I have loved my time here writing this research paper and otherwise. So thank you.